Welcome to Women's Sports Weekly, where women's sports happen every day, but we talk about it once a week. I'm Danielle.
And I'm Carolyn. Women's Sports Weekly is a podcast where we discuss the latest news, explore interesting stories, and share our love for women's sports. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at WomensSportsWeeklyPod. Follow us and rate us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Send us an email at WomensSportsWeeklyPod@gmail.com, and we may feature your email on our listener experience zone, The Les. We have a very special announcement.
We do.
We are hiring this summer. We are looking for a social media marketing intern because your girls need help.
We do.
Specifically, we're looking for a current student or a recent graduate who studies marketing, communications, or any related field. This is an opportunity for you to have the freedom to create and experiment and bring your own voice and ideas to our social media because we're really starting from nothing. We do it all ourselves and we are not hip enough to stay on the trends and we need some help. So we're really looking for someone who's eager to make a real impact, to be creative, and contribute meaningfully to our growing podcast.
Yeah, it would mean a lot to us and we would seriously love it.
So this will be from May to August in 2026. The schedule is flexible, 15 to 20 hours per week. We don't care when you do it, as long as you are able to do it. The location is remote. You can do it from anywhere in the US or Canada. And this is an unpaid internship. You know, if you listen to us, that we don't make any money doing this podcast. If we did, then this internship would be paid. We are ideally looking for someone with a strong understanding of Instagram and TikTok because that is what we use the most. We would love if they had a passion for women's sports and storytelling. We would love for them to just be really good on social media, like know how to interact with others, know how to create an engaging post, an engaging video, and do it frequently.
Yes.
So the person who is selected for this role, they will get experience shaping and executing a social media strategy because right now it's very limited, and you will have a portfolio of all the content and the campaigns you've created. We also anticipate like you'll have some really good numbers of our growth over that time, and we grow month to month. So you'll be able to take credit for that plus more, right? We want to give you all the credit for what you do. So if you know someone or you are that someone who is so great at social media, there's a link to apply in our Instagram Linktree bio and in the show notes of this episode.
We hope we get some applicants in the coming weeks. Our application does close on Friday, April 17th, so there is time. So like Carolyn said, please share with your network and we hope to find someone soon.
Let's get into the highlight reel for the week. Which, unfortunately, we're not starting with a highlight that's fun. We're starting with the International Olympic Committee, the IOC, announced a policy last Thursday that will ban transgender athletes from competing in women's events based on the results of a mandatory genetic screening that they are implementing. This will take effect starting at the 2028 Summer Games in Los Angeles. Eligibility for the female category will be determined by a one-time SRY gene screening. This screening will not be in the male category, so it is just a test for people competing in the women's category. And any time that happens, your little ears should start buzzing because that is always a little fishy.
Yeah. For sure.
The IOC is now defining men's and women's sports categories as those designated for, quote, biological females and biological males, according to reproductive biology, including sex chromosomes, gonads, and hormones, quote, regardless of their legal sex or gender identity, end quote. I also think it's interesting, and I want to note this here, that they won't be testing those competing in the male category. So technically, a trans man could compete in the men's category because they're not doing any sex testing.
Right.
Only in the women's.
Yeah, you mentioned the SRY screening. Can you talk more about that?
The screening involves swabbing the person's cheek or drawing blood to look for presence of the SRY gene, which stands for sex determining region Y, and this gene is associated with sexual development typical of males. The IOC says that the SRY gene represents highly accurate evidence that an athlete has experienced male sex development, but there is a general lack of consensus about that in the scientific community. Let's get clear on this and get into the science a little bit. So you could test positive for the gene. A woman could test positive for the gene. It doesn't automatically mean that she benefits from the hormones that it produces.
Sure. But does it mean she'll automatically be disqualified based on this rule?
It does, because they're not really digging into it anymore. So the IOC states that anyone with a SRY positive screen, including transgender women and androgen sensitive XY DSD athletes, and that DSD stands for disorders of sex development. Anyone trans or with this androgen sensitivity will be banned from competing in female categories. So we have talked about this a bunch. This effectively bans trans women, which it does. And then it also bans women who have this DSD, this disorder of sex development. And many of them don't actually know that they have it.
Of course, because why would you?
Exactly. So what this rule actually does is it targets athletes who are born female at birth, who have lived their whole lives as girls and then women, and then who have this rare genetic characteristic that affects the development of their reproductive and hormonal systems. So again, you can hate trans women, which I don't understand, but this rule will hurt more than just trans women. It will not get you what you want to ban just trans women from competing. It will ban more than that.
Which, unfortunately, I have a feeling that the people in support of this do not care.
Yeah, you're right. So on top of that, there's no direct evidence that athletes with DSD, disorders of sex development, have advantages in their sport. So to eliminate them from competition makes absolutely no sense. And then DSDs, of course, we got to add some racism in here. There's higher incidences of DSD in specific populations, including those in Southern Africa. So we see now how the racism gets brought in to this anti-trans policy. I also want to point out a quote from Jamie Schultz, a sports historian and professor of kinesiology at Penn State University. She said, "There's been moments where women have tested positive for this SRY gene, but their body can't respond to male typical levels of testosterone. So there's really no athletic benefit associated with that gene." She goes on to say, "There's all sorts of chromosomal, environmental things that go into contemplating this." Again, the science is murky. On top of that, the scientist who discovered the SRY gene in 1990, Andrew Sinclair, has publicly opposed using this test to determine biological sex.
Damn.
In an op-ed he published in The Conversation in 2025, he reiterated that it isn't cut and dried. Why are we doing this?
Great question. I wish I had an answer and I do not. Just sitting here dumbfounded.
He goes on to say, quote, "All it tells you is whether or not the gene is present. It does not tell you how the SRY is functioning, whether a testes has formed, whether testosterone is produced, and if so, whether it can be used in the body." So you can have the SRY gene and the testosterone might not even being produced from that gene, and your body may or may not use it.
That's crazy.
It is so insane to me that they are bringing back this SRY testing.
And it's like a drug test, but no one can help whether or not they have it. So it's like you're just rolling the dice and saying, well, all women need to take this. And if you have it, too bad.
And what will happen is that people will take the test. They won't know that they have this. And then they will get all this media written about them. They'll get all this horrible things written about them because they'll get accused as trans, which why being accused as trans is a bad thing, I still don't understand. But you just see the ripple effects of this, right?
Yeah, I wonder if athletes will start testing themselves ahead of time. I have so much anxiety that I would do that because I would not want to be on blast in front of all these people. That's horrible.
I get triggered for this for a lot of reasons. One, because I think humans should be able to compete in sports. And I have so much respect for our trans community and what they need to go through that it's just like, you think there's any benefit to coming out as trans? It's just like an uphill battle the moment you come out. On top of that, and we've talked about this a little bit before, but I don't know if I have this gene.
Right.
And I spent so much of my life being athletic, which is great, and also getting called out as a dyke and getting my gender questioned all the time in high school as a joke, but still horribly because I was athletic.
Yeah, it's horrible.
And so I can feel that. Like you can feel that. And on top of that, men feel that too, right? The moment they're a little bit feminine, they get called out for being a pussy or all of that. It's just like a horrible environment to be in, whether you're man, woman, or anywhere in between.
Yeah.
So because of privacy concerns for this test, European countries like France and Norway already ban any genetic testing not done for medical or research purposes. So if they need to get tested, they need to do it outside of their country. And the cost can be $250 for a test. And for the smaller countries who are going into the Olympics, who unfortunately these rules will probably have more of an impact on, $250 can be a lot. And who's paying for that?
Right.
So just another thing to keep women, all women, out of sports. And this isn't new. When this was announced, I was like, oh, we're going to try this again. So interesting. It's never worked and it never will work. But women have been subjected to questions about their sex since they started competing in elite sports over a century ago. It was initially invasive gynecological exams and physical scrutiny. And then from the 1960s to the 1990s, the IOC required female athletes to verify their sex through chromosome testing. And that was eventually replaced by this exact test, this SRY testing. And the IOC dropped the requirement in 1999 after a lot of pressure from athletes and scientists. So we've done this exact test before and it has not served its purpose.
So how and why is it coming back now?
My opinion is it's coming back because there's pressure politically for it to come back.
Yeah.
Because there's this whole new wave of fairness in women's sports. And what it actually means is white women like Riley Gaines, who tied for 5th place, are going around and saying that it's unfair when she never would have won anyway.
Oh my God.
And there's just this real big political push for it. So flashback to 1996 in the Atlanta Games, 8 female athletes were found to have the SRY gene, but subsequently they were all allowed to compete because they were determined to be women with conditions such as androgen insensitivity syndrome. So like imagine what they had to go through in 1996. Medical experts and the IOC Athletes Commission deemed the test discriminatory at the time and the cause of human suffering, noting that they often revealed rare genetic conditions to athletes in a cruel public manner. So let's do that again. I also just want to point out that the IOC is currently run by President Christy Coventry, and she said that this was not pressure from the Trump administration or any other. This was not a political move. And to that, I say bullshit. And mostly for the fact of you've done this in the past and it hasn't worked. So why would you do that? The science is murky at best. So what else could it be if it's not politically motivated? And I'm sorry, fuck you, Christy Coventry, for thinking we are stupid enough to believe that sentence.
But there are people who are.
To believe that it's not political.
Yeah, because people who want this to happen will just agree with that.
Just believe like that it's based on science when all the science says it's not.
They believe a lot of other things.
I know.
So why not this?
We go round on round on this. Yeah. And this is where I struggle a little bit because it's a difference in thinking, right? I'm like, why wouldn't people trust the science?
Oh, yeah. This is why we have so much turmoil to begin with.
Yeah, I don't know. This just really got to me this week where I was just like, we just continue to go backwards. There are so many ways that women's sports needs help and support. There are so many ways that we can make women's sports more fair through funding, through additional resources. And instead, we waste our time doing things that don't work that will only hurt more women in the long run.
Yeah, because instead of putting the focus, to your point, on more funding and make it more fair when you're looking at the male side versus the female side, no, we're going to pin women against each other and then just distract from what the real issues are.
That's exactly right. I'm sorry to the women that this is going to affect, to the young girls who have to operate under this environment.
And just all women who need to go through this testing, whether they have the gene or not. That feels invasive to me no matter what. That I don't know if I have the gene, but if I just had to go through the testing, the anxiety I would have about it and just what does this mean if I do? It's unfair. And now they're taking the focus off their sport to worry about this.
That's exactly right. And I'm sorry to all the humans in this world who are involved in sport, because this affects every single person in sport. It calls into question now every time you can be like, did they have their SRY gene tested? I want to know. I want to see the results. They're too good.
And is this going to come into play for professional sports within our country or within national play, not just international play?
Yep. And it trickles down and how that will impact young kids. It just drives me a little bit crazy. And I'm sorry for also to the people who watch sports, because you are not going to see the best women compete. You're just going to see the women who best serve this political environment. And that drives me a little crazy that that's where we are right now.
Yeah.
So not great news. We are going to transition into better news, which is the Denver Summit kickoff. But I do just want to call out that there were over 60,000 people in Denver at the Denver Summit home game. And the huge sign behind the goal in front of the supporters section was trans people belong in sport. And that has always been our stance. And it will continue to be our stance because we know what these policies impact and we know what it takes to make women's sports more fair. And we'll leave it at that.
Yeah. And to that point about the trans flag and just all the people who showed up for the Denver Summit this weekend, it just makes me so proud to live here and be a part of this movement.
Yes. And I hope everyone saw it while they were watching the Denver Summit. So let's get into this Denver Summit home opener versus the Washington Spirit. I want to take our listeners through our day.
Yeah, not just the day of. I've been thinking about this game for months now, and social media has been sharing every time like another 10K tickets have been sold.
Yep.
Going into the game, we realized that over 60K tickets have been sold. And the hype around that, just between you and me really, and our run club and this whole week in the city and all the kickoff events had me so fired up going into Saturday.
Yeah, I went to an event last Thursday where it was in Larimer Square, which is a central square within Denver, where they were doing a pop-up event where you could get some merch and you could get your scarf if you were a season ticket holder. And I waited on a merch line for over a half hour just to get something, to get this hat and to get you a shirt for Saturday. And they were like, we'll have more stuff at the game. And I'm like, yeah, I know what those merch lines are going to be like with 60,000 people there.
Yeah, and that one day this week wasn't even the only day that there was an event, and it wasn't the only week. We've been having events ever since the summit was announced, and there's still been lines and lines and lines. And we did see the merch line in the stadium, and it was wrapped around so far, and we were like, thank goodness we have our stuff.
Yeah, and kudos to their marketing team and their operations team who put this all together, but mostly kudos to the people who showed up. Just really, really incredible for the city to show up like that.
Seriously.
So we woke up this past Saturday and started getting ready for the game because it started at 12 here in Denver. We headed to the tailgate around 10:15 in the morning. Our neighbors were going, who I didn't even know they liked women's sports. We were in the car and people were walking out of their house, and we live like 2 miles from the stadium, and people were just walking out of their house in Denver Summit gear. And I was like, Danielle, look, everyone around us is going to this game.
Yeah, and then we drove downtown and hopped on one of the trains to go to Empower Field, and so many kids, parents, families, older people, younger people, everyone in their new Denver Summit gear. And that was just making us so giddy being on the train with all those fans.
Yeah. And then we headed to the tailgate, and it was a huge gay tailgate, and it was awesome.
Yeah. And there were so many people outside of the tailgate. We were a part of tailgating all over the stadium.
And so we tailgated. We had a couple pickle shots. I played a really bad round of flip cup, and I was like, all right, get me inside because I don't want to miss anything. So we headed into the stadium around 11:30 to give us a solid half hour to get settled before the game. So we get to our seats. Our seats are awesome.
I knew we were going to be in the 100 section, but I didn't realize how close to the field we were going to be. I just knew we had our seats, and wow, I was blown away by how good they were.
We were right above the tunnel where the players come in and out of. And then we were with our friends Dia and Lindsay, who run the women's basketball club here in Denver and worldwide. We were just looking at each other. I think I said multiple times, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. I'm so happy we're here. I'm so happy we're experiencing this. Look at this. I was in awe.
Same. We thought we were going in early at 11:30, and the stadium was already packed with people. It was so hard to maneuver people getting in. People were pumped, and it was great.
The vibes were high. They had 4 different parachuters come in their Denver Summit jerseys, and they like dive bomb into the stadium, and then they just glide in. And every time I get so nervous, and they do it perfectly. They had fireworks. They had this whole setup. Oh, and then they had the flyover during the national anthem. And
that was sick.
Yeah, I felt super patriotic then.
Yeah. And it was so cool. Obviously, we're huge Denver Summit fans now that we have a team. But it was cool seeing some of the Washington Spirit players. Like, come on, Trinity Rodman, as she was walking towards the tunnel, I was like, holy shit, she's a real person. I've never been so close to her. When there's someone who's such a big star, I get starstruck every time.
Yeah.
And it's not even like we were on the field with her, but I was like, she is so close to us right now. It was insane.
It was a beautiful day. It beat the NWSL attendance record. I cried multiple times throughout the day, just looking around and being like, wow, we get fed this narrative that people don't care. And some people believe that and they don't care, but it's so not true of the majority of people.
Yeah.
Right? Like most people care and most people want good things for their city. And that was just so evident to me. I want to read a quote from Janine Sonis, who grew up just south of Denver and plays for the Denver Summit and actually was player of the match. So she said, quote, "I had tears in my eyes. I truly didn't believe that this was something that was going to happen in my career. I'm just so grateful to be here. It was a tough balance to manage the emotions and put in a performance. I will never forget walking out of the tunnel today and hearing the crowd screaming for us," end quote.
Yeah.
I'm
getting chills just reading that.
I know. The game was exciting.
Yes, so many good shots on goal on both sides, and great saves by the goalies.
Correct, but nobody scored.
I was so bummed by that because I was like, if no one scores, we're gonna miss the opportunity to have that whole stadium erupt if Denver scored. That part was unfortunate, but so it goes in soccer.
And I was like, oh, they had so many more pyrotechnics that they could have used today if we scored.
Yeah. Oh, we were so close.
But it ended in a tie, 0-0. Like you said, there were some close ones by both teams. And Washington really seemed to own the first half. But then I thought the Summit really took control of the second half and had some really, really good opportunities. Carson Pickett on the corner kicks was just placing it on people's heads. And I was like, oh, we're so close. But it didn't happen. It was just an awesome day to be part of. And I think a day that I'm going to remember for the rest of my life. And then afterwards, we went out to a post-game party with our Run Club friends. And it was just like so nice to be around people. And I was like, this is wonderful. It was a really nice day.
Truly. I just can't even explain the pride I already feel for this team. And I have to learn the players still. This is very new. Learn the roster. I'm getting to know people. But having a team in our city, I really can't explain the feeling that I have during these games. I mean, the amount of stress.
Yes.
I kept looking at my watch and I was like, oh, my heart rate's close to 100. And my resting heart rate is low 50s. Sometimes it drops to the 40s. So for me to get up to 100 just watching a game, saying something, and I was like, I'm gonna break an ankle because every time there was an almost goal, I just was jumping up and grabbing my hair. Oh, I was so stressed, and it's gonna be a long season of that.
Yeah. And Dia and Lindsay were like, wow, Danielle's really into this. And I'm like, yes.
You should see her at home watching Notre Dame basketball games.
Once you have your team, you get very invested, and then no umpire, no referee can make a call right for your team. It's just like this whole other side comes out of you.
It does. I was like, do you think people think I'm psychotic? Because I really just can't help my emotions right now.
It's awesome. It's good to be a fan.
Yeah. It's nice to have a team in our city to be a fan of and not just be like, who should I root for today?
Yeah. And it's interesting because we do this podcast now and we're trying to be professional media people. And we also just have our biases. And I never want to lose this. I love that we're fans.
Yeah.
And as much as it's cool to go onto the field and do interviews and do media and be professional, I also just love sitting in the stands with people who are like-minded and screaming at the top of my lungs.
Same. I'll never get over it. I kept saying I'll never recover from this, and I don't think I will.
It was awesome. All right, let's get into some updates from us.
Yes, starting with Run Club this Thursday and every Thursday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time here in Denver at the 99ers Sports Bar. If you listen to our podcast each week, we share a secret word that you can share with the bartenders after the run for 50% off your first draft. The secret word this week is summit.
It's got to be summit.
Sum it up. Sum it up.
I also need to take this time to ask you to please rate and subscribe to our podcast. We create, produce, and edit the podcast ourselves, and we also are looking for a social media marketing intern. Head to our bio and fill out that application. But if you want to support us, rate, subscribe, give us a positive review, and share this podcast with the people you love. Thank you to everyone who has rated the podcast. If you send us a screenshot of your 5-star rating, we will send you a Women's Sports Weekly sticker for free in the mail. Okay, let's get into March Madness. We'll cover the Sweet 16 and some of the Elite 8.
You know, I have my Notre Dame shirt on.
Well, let's talk about the good things first. Let's talk about
I have
the
it
Sweet
on
16.
because I'm still very proud of them.
I know they kept showing flashbacks to the 2018.
Yeah, that was our first Final Four, and talk about a weekend I'll never forget.
Yeah.
And I was so happy you came because you were on the fence at first, and I was coaching at Moravian at the time, and I was going regardless with the staff, and you were like, yeah, I'm going to come. And we drove 8 hours to Columbus, Ohio. Best decision of our lives.
Arike Agumbawale hit 2 back-to-back buzzer beaters.
Oh, unbelievable. So, unfortunately, I'm not going to see Notre Dame in the Final Four this year, but I have to say, they got way further in the tournament than even I thought this year, starting with the Sweet 16. Now, I talked a lot about them last week, saying I didn't think they could beat Vandy, the number 2 seed, but they pulled this off. And they won that game 67-64. Whew, Hannah Hidalgo probably had the game of her life.
Yes.
Almost a quadruple double.
And this was, as a reminder, Notre Dame was the number 6 seed. Vandy was the number 2. I would like to point out that I said that this was going to be a tough matchup for Vanderbilt, and they probably would have wanted Ohio State over Notre Dame. I also said that I didn't think Notre Dame would make it past the Sweet 16 because they have a homophobic curse. And I think the curse must be lifted, and Hannah Hidalgo must be making amends because they did make it past the Sweet 16 with this win.
I really hope she is. And I really think overall her maturity has just gone up. And I've said that, like, just watching her play, even, I know we're not talking about the Elite 8 game yet against UConn, but even when the game was going south for Notre Dame and you could see that they were going to lose, her composure, and that's really hard as an athlete, especially in that position, but I'm hoping that means her views have also matured.
That's a great point.
This was the first time Notre Dame advanced to the Elite 8 since 2019. So you and I went to the Final Four in 2018 when they won it all. 2019, they went back and lost in the championship to a very close game.
Who was that to? Do you remember?
I think Baylor, if I'm remembering correctly. I could be wrong. Yeah, I was right. Baylor. Good memory. I remember being very upset. We were living in Hackensack at the time. I remember watching the game in our old living room. But anyways, I digress.
You were upset we weren't there? Or
I was upset we weren't there, and I was upset they lost. And I was like, you know how I get. You saw me this past weekend.
I did.
So in this game against Vanderbilt, the Irish did lead by as many as 12 points. But then, of course, Vanderbilt started to come back and ended up tying it midway through the fourth quarter. And then they briefly led by 2 twice in the final stretch. Like you said, when I like a team, my anxiety is through the roof, and I was starting to lose hope. I was just so nervous, and I tried to maintain my expectations. Vanderbilt's Michaela Blakes, who was the top scorer for all of NCAA this season, had 26 points, so she still had a great game, and I would say she struggled in this game. A lot of her points in the beginning were coming from the foul line, and she was doing a great job getting to the foul line, but she was struggling from the field. And then she ended the game with, for her sake, a very upsetting turnover, and I felt really bad for her.
Yeah, it was just like an over dribble and it went out of bounds, and it was a crucial point during the game, and I was just like, oh, that's the type of thing that's just going to stay in your mind for a very, very long time.
And as competitive as I am and how much I love my teams, even I don't want to see something like that happen, like to a sophomore. I have a heart for these people, and that had to suck.
As you mentioned, Hannah Hidalgo went off in this. She had a triple-double. She scored 31 points, 11 rebounds, and 10 steals. She almost had a quadruple-double with 7 assists. So 3 more assists, and it would have been a quadruple-double. She played out of her mind in this tournament.
Yeah, and in this game with her 10 steals, I think she went into the game just needing 4 or 5 to break the single season record for steals, and she went on to have 10.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I think to be able to be that good of a defensive player and offensive, that shows you have the full package. And she's only 5'6", 5'7". She's tiny, and she's just so tenacious. Is that the word? She does not let up.
She does not. And she put that team on her back, who they've been having a rough season, and said, doesn't matter what happened this whole season, we're going to make it to the Elite 8. And that's just really incredible.
Yeah, and they did.
But let's stay in the Sweet 16 and talk about Duke, who is the 3 seed, beating LSU, the number 2 seed.
Another great game.
This was a bracket buster for sure. Duke beat LSU 87-85. The game was very close the entire time, the first 3 quarters. Duke led most of the first half, and then the third quarter started, and LSU made a run, and then it was just back and forth, back and forth. Duke, though, went on an 11-0 run to begin the fourth quarter to give them a double-digit lead, and their lead was still 9 points with 3.5 minutes remaining in the game. But LSU responded with a 10-0 run to take the lead in the final minute.
Yeah, and this is a point in the game where I was like, they blew it. Duke's not going to win this game. And we talk about the SEC all the time and how it's the best conference. But I was just like, it's over. It's over. I was getting so upset because I wanted to see Duke win this game. I got to give it to Duke, man. They did not give up.
Yeah, and they could have, because with 18 seconds to go in the entire game, Duke's Ashlyn Jackson missed 2 key free throws that would have put Duke up by 3. She is a great foul shot shooter, and she missed both of them. And I was like, oh my gosh, LSU is going to come back and win this.
Yeah, I can't imagine the nerves going through her body. I laughed because I think Kara Lawson was like, bring us home. And then she misses both. And I get to laugh at this because she ends up winning the game for them. But even in that moment, I was like, they're done. This is terrible. How do you miss your foul shots? Meanwhile, I'm in bed trying to keep my eyes open and struggling to, because it was so late. And I'm like, must watch the end of this game.
But you didn't, because
okay, in my defense, they kept calling timeouts and I kept resting my eyes and then opening them, and it would still be a timeout and then resting them, and then all of a sudden you're like, Danielle, it went in, and I like jumped out of my slumber. I was like, oh my God, I missed it, but keep going.
So Duke was down 85-84 with 2.6 seconds left. They had the ball. Ashlyn Jackson received the inbound pass. Mind you, she just missed 2 free throws, and she shot fakes it and gets Flau'jae Johnson to bite at the shot fake, and then takes a shot that is like,
and steps back too.
It's not an easy shot.
No.
She put up a 3-pointer, and as she puts up the 3-pointer, the clock is going out.
Yeah, like you could see the backboard light up.
Was
Time's
red.
Done.
And the ball is going around and around and around the rim 3 times. And I was like, there's no way this is going in. And then it went in and they won.
Unreal.
It was the best thing I saw all weekend. No, it wasn't. The Denver Summit game was the best thing I saw all weekend. That was second best. But I was like, Danielle, it went in. Wake up.
Yeah. And I like shot up. And I was like, are they going to replay it? Are they going to replay it? Because it took them a little bit because they were showing the celebrations. I was so mad at myself. But God, I'm a sleepy lady. An old lady, I should say.
You are a sleepy old lady. But Duke ends up winning this. Ashlyn Jackson finished the game with 19 points, 5 assists. And then Toby Fournier and Taina Mare both had 22 points to lead Duke, which is great. I, at the beginning of the season, had Duke in the Final Four.
You did.
And they were, at one time in this season, they were 3-6 after losing by 16 to LSU in the beginning of the season. And that was back in December. And then since then, they've gone on a 24 and now 3 run and won the ACC regular season and the conference tournament. Just what an adjustment they've done, and led by head coach Kara Lawson, who had a press conference where she just said, I'm so aligned in my purpose. I'm on the right team. I'm coaching exactly where I should be. I'm with the right people. And I was just like, wow, that's really cool to hear from the leader of your team that she feels like she's directly in her purpose.
It would have been cool if they got there because it's been 20 years since their last. But unfortunately, they couldn't pull it off against UCLA. But I would say this LSU win was huge for them. I think it's a huge lift for their program, even getting this far. They had a great season.
They did. And we can talk about the Elite Eight now because they had to play UCLA. I just want to say, if Duke beat UCLA, I would have looked like a freaking genius.
You would have.
I would have been like, I told you. I looked back in our notes. You know who else I had in the Final Four? Which
I couldn't remember. I
horrible
remember
pick.
Duke. Who? Tennessee?
Yeah.
Ooh.
I know.
Yikes.
Bad picks. Bad picks.
Duke wasn't bad.
Duke wasn't a bad pick, but don't listen to any of my other picks. I just get so excited.
Do you remember my picks?
Yeah, I do.
But even though I have UCLA in my bracket, I was still rooting for Duke. I was.
You were rooting hard. You also have some beef with UCLA that you've got to figure out. So let's get into the Elite Eight. Let's talk about UCLA and Duke first. So UCLA struggled in the first half against Duke. Duke was actually up, but they made some magical adjustment.
Yeah.
And then they ended up winning 70-58.
And they have a lot of veterans on the team, and it showed at the end. There was a call when the refs called it out on UCLA, and Dugalich knew it wasn't off of her, and she wanted them to replay, but they weren't doing it right away. So she just goes down on her knee, unties her shoe, and starts retying it to delay the game, and the coaches are looking at the iPad. So they're smart.
Yeah.
Pissed me off, really pissed Kara Lawson off. But then the coaches were like, oh, she's right. Then they challenged it and were able to win it. And see, it's things like that where you're like,
that's
only a veteran team would do something like that. And that helped them down the line.
Yeah, and we'll see at the Final Four. I think UCLA was, to put it very plainly, embarrassed at the Final Four last year. And I think there were a lot of people who it was their first Final Four. And now you have everyone back. You have 6 seniors or grad students who are back at the Final Four. That is just such an advantage. It is such an advantage to have been there before because it is different.
Yeah.
And we were there last year and we're going to be there this year. And the level of media and the amount of hype is like nothing we've ever seen before. I don't know how you internalize that as a player and then still play at the top of your game knowing there's so much focus on you.
It's going to be interesting because the same Final Four from last year are in it this year and they all have that experience.
That's right.
Except for the freshmen.
So UCLA wins this game. They beat Duke 70-58. And then UConn, this actually happened before, UConn beat Notre Dame 70-52. And with that, UConn's headed to their 25th Final Four.
This was a stressful game for me. I will say, Notre Dame played as well as they could. They couldn't score. Hannah didn't score the whole first quarter. UConn's defense is unbelievable. UConn had players off their bench playing the games of their lives, and Notre Dame struggled a bit, and yet Notre Dame, I think, still held UConn to the lowest scoring first half of the season, if I remember correctly. So they played good defense too, and you know what? I didn't even think they were going to get this far. I hoped. And for them to lose an undefeated team and the best team in the country, I'll take my hats off to them either way.
For sure. And then it doesn't help when you have Blanca Quinones, who comes off the bench and scores 20 points with 3 assists and 8 rebounds.
I mean, how many threes did she take?
There was a lot.
They just left her open. I was like, are they going to guard her?
And it wasn't AZ's best game.
No.
But you don't have to have your best game when you have someone come off the bench and score 20 points.
Yeah. Lacey.
So our Final Four is UConn, who has not lost, UCLA, who has 1 loss to Texas, then South Carolina, and finally Texas.
It's going to be a fun Final Four. I am so excited to be there once again. Oh, I can't wait.
Cannot wait. Let's talk about what we're looking forward to this week.
Let's do it. How can we not be looking forward to Phoenix, the Final Four? We are headed there tonight. Cannot wait. If you'll be there, send us a DM. Maybe we can meet you.
Yeah, at least give you a sticker because we will be out and about in Phoenix. We really hope the Final Four flu does not come our way.
Oh my God. If you didn't listen last year, I got deathly ill and missed the national championship. I was in the Airbnb on my literal deathbed. So my goal this year is to make it to all games.
The semifinals will be played on Friday, April 3rd, and then the finals will be on Sunday, April 5th. Look for us on TV. Send us messages. We will be covering it all. We can't wait to be back and share everything that happened within the weekend. It's always such a fun weekend.
Yes. And if you have good food recs, I'm always looking for recs
DM
in
us.
Cities we're going to. So if you know of Phoenix and know good food there, let us know. We're not like, give us the trendy place for Instagram. Not that I don't love a good Instagram post, but we're foodies over here. I'm looking for good food. So keep that in mind.
Send our way. That is it for this week. We will see you next week on Women's Sports Weekly. In the meantime, watch women's sports and share the podcast with your friends. Rate and subscribe to the pod on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Thanks for joining us.